I'm Michael, I'm 42, and my entire family chose to go venue shopping for my sister's wedding instead of showing up for my 7-year-old son's open-heart surgery. Before I tell you about the explosive phone call I got from my bank manager the next morning, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It's always incredible to see how far these stories can reach. The phone rang at precisely 9:01 a.m., the sound slicing through the quiet focus of my office. I recognized the number immediately. It was the main branch of Northwood Community Bank, the place where I'd opened my first savings account with a crumpled $20 bill from my 10th birthday, a place I associated with my family. My stomach tightened into a cold, hard knot. Michael? It's Derek Morrison. Derek. The name sent a jolt through me. I remembered him from a disastrous family barbecue years ago, laughing a little too loudly at my father's bad jokes. He was my father's golf buddy. This wasn't a random call from the bank. This was personal. This was an ambush. Derek, good morning. Is everything okay? I said, my voice a carefully constructed mask of calm. I swiveled in my chair, turning away from the financial reports on my screen that suddenly seemed meaningless. Well, that's what I'm calling to find out, he said. His voice had that practiced, overly smooth tone of a man used to delivering bad news. I have your mother, Eleanor, here in my office. Well, to be frank, she's making quite a scene. I closed my eyes, a wave of weary resignation washing over me. Of course, she was. Public scenes were her specialty. Let me guess, I said, my voice dropping to a low, tired murmur. She's trying to withdraw $5,000. A beat of silence on the other end. That's exactly right. From the joint savings account. The problem is, Michael, the system is showing her access was revoked yesterday evening. The authorization came from your online portal. I took a slow, deliberate breath, the air feeling heavy in my lungs. That's correct, Derek. I revoked her access. It's no longer a joint account. She's claiming it's family money, Derek pressed, his friendly banker facade slipping to reveal the annoyance beneath. He was clearly on their side. She's saying you're, and I'm quoting her directly here, stealing her retirement savings for spite. A bitter, humorless laugh escaped my lips. It wasn't a sound of amusement. It was the sound of something breaking. Retirement savings? Derek, that account is my son's emergency medical fund. It's his future college fund. Every single cent in there, all $47,000, came directly from my salary. My parents haven't contributed a dime to it in over a decade. I have the statements to prove it. Be that as it may, Derek said, his voice now cold and official. Your mother is making some very serious accusations. She's threatening to get lawyers involved, talking about financial abuse. Then let her, I said, a strange, liberating calm settling over me. Tell her to hire the best lawyer she can find. And you can tell her from me that fund is for my son. The same son whose heart was literally stopped and restarted on an operating table 3 days ago while she was tasting wedding cakes. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual work to do. I hung up the phone before he could utter another word. My hand was shaking, not from fear, but from a pure, distilled rage I had kept bottled up for a lifetime. The war had officially begun. Let's rewind 6 weeks. I was sitting on the edge of that horrible floral-patterned sofa in my parents' living room, the kind of furniture that's purely for show. The air was thick with my mother's cloying potpourri and the unspoken family rule. Everything revolves around Chloe. My mother, Eleanor, was meticulously inspecting her manicure. My father, Richard, was hidden behind the business section of the newspaper. My older brother, Daniel, was absorbed in his phone, a smirk on his face from some video he was watching. And my little sister, Chloe, the sun around which our family planet orbited, was texting furiously, a tiny, satisfied smile playing on her lips. I cleared my throat, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet room. I need to talk to you all. I have an update on Leo. That got their attention. 5 pairs of eyes reluctantly lifted in my direction. We met with the pediatric cardiologist last week. I began, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. I twisted a loose thread on my jeans. The hole in his heart. It's not closing on its own. The pressure on his lungs is getting worse. Dr. Anderson says we can't wait any longer. They've scheduled his open-heart surgery. It's on October 12th. The casual atmosphere in the room evaporated. My father lowered his newspaper, his face paling. My God, Michael. That's a serious operation. The risks. They're significant. I admitted, my own fear a metallic taste in my mouth. It's one of the best surgical teams in the country, but they were very clear. It's a long, complex procedure. He'll be in the ICU for a couple of days and in the hospital for at least a week, maybe more. My mother finally set her hand down, her brow furrowed in concentration. October 12th? Oh dear. That's a Tuesday. We have that meeting with the wedding caterer for Chloe that week. Don't we? She looked at Chloe, her concern clearly directed at the potential disruption to the wedding schedule. Chloe let out a long, dramatic sigh. Mom, it's okay, we can reschedule the tasting. Gosh, Michael, that's awful. Poor little Leo. The words were correct, but her tone was distracted, her eyes already glazing over as she thought about flowers or seating charts. This was it. The moment I had to ask, to make myself vulnerable. I'm going to need you, I said, my voice cracking slightly. I can't sit in that waiting room by myself. And Leo, he's only 7. He's terrified. The only thing he keeps asking is, will Grandma and Grandpa be there? Will Aunt Chloe and Uncle Daniel be there when I wake up? I let the question hang in the air, a raw, desperate plea. For a moment, it seemed to break through their self-absorption. My mother's expression softened. She rose and came over, placing a cool hand on my shoulder. Oh, sweetheart, of course we'll be there. Don't be silly. We wouldn't miss it for the world. We are your family, after all. Daniel finally looked up from his phone, a flicker of sincerity in his eyes. Yeah, absolutely, man. We've got your back. Just text us the details. We'll be there. Even Chloe managed a pained but seemingly genuine smile. Don't you worry, Mikey. We'll all be there, camped out in the waiting room with bad coffee. For the little guy. My father nodded, his voice firm. You have our word, son. We'll be there for you and for our grandson. The collective reassurance was so powerful, so unanimous, that it felt like a physical weight being lifted off my chest. Relief washed over me, pure and overwhelming. I looked at their faces, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself believe them completely. I thought, this is it. This is the crisis that will finally make us a real family. I thanked them, my voice thick with emotion. I walked out of that house feeling a fragile hope blooming in my chest. I was a fool. I had forgotten that in my family, promises were not commitments. They were just pretty words used to end an uncomfortable conversation. The hope I felt leaving my parents' house was a dangerous thing. It was like a drug that temporarily erased a lifetime of evidence to the contrary. In the quiet of my car on the drive home, the ghosts of birthdays past and achievements ignored began to climb into the passenger seat. I was the reliable son, the stable one, the one who never caused any trouble and, consequently, never got much attention. Daniel was the charming screw-up, the one who always needed bailing out of some self-inflicted jam, which my parents mistook for an exciting personality. And Chloe was born sparkling. I remembered my 16th birthday. All I wanted was to get my driver's license. The test was scheduled for that morning. I'd been practicing parallel parking for weeks. That morning, however, Chloe woke up with a terrible sore throat. It was the day of her drama club's dress rehearsal for the school play. My mother declared it a medical emergency. My father was dispatched to the pharmacy for the most expensive throat lozenges. My mother spent the morning brewing herbal teas and fussing over her. My driving test was forgotten. When I finally brought it up around noon, my mother said, "Oh, honestly, Michael, can't you see your sister is suffering? You can take the test another time." I took it a month later on a city bus. Chloe's sore throat had vanished by lunchtime. Then there was the first real milestone of my adult life. After years of saving, I'd finally scraped together enough for a down payment on a small condo. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I'd worked overtime for 2 years, packed my own lunches, and said no to everything. It was the biggest accomplishment of my life. I invited my parents over to see it. They walked in, and my mother's first comment was, "It's cozy. Much smaller than the apartment Chloe is looking at downtown." My father nodded in agreement, running his hand along a wall. "The paint job is a bit sloppy, son." They stayed for 20 minutes, talked mostly about Chloe's search for a place with a doorman, and left. They never mentioned it again. The most painful memory, though, was more recent. It was just after my divorce. A brutal time when I was struggling to adapt to being a single father. I was up for a major promotion at work, the one that would finally give me the financial security I desperately needed for Leo and me. The final presentation was on a Friday afternoon. My parents had promised, sworn even, to watch Leo. 2 hours before I was supposed to leave, my mother called. "Michael, darling, terrible news. Chloe's dog just ate a bar of dark chocolate. We have to rush him to the emergency vet. We can't possibly watch Leo." I pleaded with her. "Mom, this is my career. This promotion changes everything for us. Family comes first, Michael," she'd said, her voice dripping with sanctimony. "And right now, Chloe needs us." I had to call my boss, make a humiliating excuse, and pull out of the presentation. I didn't get the promotion. The next day, I saw a picture Chloe had posted on Instagram. It was her and her dog on a sunny patio, both perfectly healthy. The caption read, "A little scare, but Puddles is fine. Nothing a little vet-prescribed TLC can't fix." It was a pattern, a deep, unchanging, soul-crushing pattern. My needs were trivial, my successes were minor, and my crises were inconvenient. Everything always was secondary to Chloe. And yet, I had let myself believe this time would be different. Because this wasn't about me. It was about my son, an innocent 7-year-old boy. I thought, naively, that his pain would be the one thing powerful enough to break the pattern. Couldn't have been more wrong. The night before the surgery felt like a waking nightmare. The hospital room was a symphony of quiet, unnerving sounds. The rhythmic beep of the heart monitor, the gentle hiss of the oxygen, the distant echo of a PA system. Leo was a small, fragile shape in the middle of the large, sterile bed. He had been a champion all day, enduring needles and tests with a stoicism that broke my heart. But as the fluorescent lights of the hallway cast long shadows into our room, his 7-year-old courage began to crumble. He lay there, staring at the acoustic tile ceiling, clutching his worn stuffed dinosaur, Rex, so tightly his knuckles were white. "Daddy?" he whispered, his voice so small it was almost swallowed by the hum of the machines. I was in the uncomfortable visitor's chair, pretending to read a magazine. I tossed it aside and pulled the chair right up to his bedside, taking his small hand in both of mine. "I'm right here, buddy. I'm not going anywhere." His big, brown eyes, swimming with fear, fixed on mine. "Are they really coming? Are Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Chloe and Uncle Daniel really going to be here when I wake up?" "You pinky promised." I forced a smile that felt brittle, like it might crack my face. "I did, and they promised me. They will be right outside in the waiting room the whole time. When you open your eyes, the first person you'll see is me. And then they'll all come rushing in to see their superhero." He seemed to draw a little comfort from that, his grip on my hand relaxing slightly. But the fear was a living thing in the room, a cold presence. He was quiet for a long time, and I thought he had finally fallen asleep. Then, his voice, a trembling whisper, cut through the dark. "Daddy, what if I don't wake up?" The question wasn't just a question. It was a spear. It went straight through all my carefully constructed walls of calm and pierced the terrified father cowering inside. Every worst-case scenario the surgeon had been obligated to list, every dark possibility I had shoved into a locked box in my mind, came roaring out. Couldn't breathe. My own heart felt like it was seizing in my chest. But he couldn't see that. He couldn't feel my terror. He needed his dad. I leaned forward, resting my forehead against his, and poured every ounce of love, every shred of strength I had left into my voice. "Hey, look at me," I whispered fiercely. You are the bravest, strongest kid I have ever known. The doctors are going to fix your heart, and you are going to wake up. You are going to wake up, and you're going to complain about the hospital food. And I'm going to be right here. I made a promise to my son in that dark, cold room. A sacred vow. And I was staking that vow on the empty words of people who treated promises like used tissues. He finally drifted into a restless sleep an hour later. I didn't move. I sat there, my head resting on the edge of his bed, his small hand in mine, and watched the rhythmic green line on the monitor. Each beat was a prayer. I made a second promise that night, a silent one to the universe. I would protect this boy. I would be his shield against all the pain in the world. I just never imagined the deepest wounds would come from the people I was supposed to call family. 5:30 a.m. The hospital at this hour is a ghost town, a world of hushed movements and the sterile scent of antiseptic. Leo was awake, his small body tense under the thin hospital blanket. Every squeak of a cart in the hallway, every footstep past our door. His head would lift from the pillow, his eyes wide and searching. Is that them, Daddy? Not yet, champ. It's still super early, I'd reply, my own voice sounding hollow. The knot of unease in my stomach was growing, tightening with each passing minute. The group text I'd sent the night before, we're at the hospital, room 412. Surgery is at 6 a.m. See you in the morning. Had received only a single lazy thumbs-up emoji from my brother, Daniel. Nothing from my parents. Nothing from Chloe. They're just not texters, I told myself. They're probably already on their way. It was a flimsy shield against a creeping dread. At 6:02 a.m., a kind-faced nurse named Sarah entered with a transport gurney. Her smile was warm, but her eyes meant business. It's time to go, Leo, she said softly. Time to get that heart fixed. Leo's face crumpled. A raw, terrified sob escaped his lips and he threw his arms around my neck, clinging to me with surprising strength. No, I don't want to. They're not here yet. You promised. The accusation in his voice was a physical blow. I know, buddy, I know. I choked out, fighting back my own tears. I pried his arms from my neck, my heart breaking with every inch. They must be stuck in that awful morning traffic. You know how your grandma drives. They'll be here any minute. I promise. It was a desperate, pathetic lie, and I think we both knew it. I helped Sarah move him to the gurney. As they started to wheel him away, his eyes, wide with a terrifying mix of fear and betrayal, never left my face. I walked alongside him down the long, unnaturally bright corridor, past closed doors and quiet nursing stations, all the way to the imposing double doors of the surgical wing. I leaned down, kissed his trembling forehead one last time. I love you. You're my hero. I'll see you in a few hours. Then the doors swung shut and he was gone. The walk to the surgical waiting room was the loneliest of my life. It was a large, impersonal room, furnished with uncomfortable chairs and a table littered with outdated magazines. A handful of other families were scattered around the room, speaking in low murmurs, drawing strength from each other. They were units, teams. I was a solitary island of anxiety. I sat in a corner and pulled out my phone. It felt like a useless brick in my hand. 7 a.m. I called my mother. It rang and rang, then went to voicemail. Hi, you've reached Eleanor. Please leave a message. Her voice was cheerful, recorded on a sunny, carefree day. 7:05 a.m. I called my father. Straight to voicemail. 7:10 a.m. I called Chloe. It rang once, then the call ended abruptly. A cold dread washed over me. She hadn't missed the call. She had declined it. She had looked at my name on her screen and actively pressed ignore. 7:15 a.m. I called Daniel. Voicemail. I sat back in the hard plastic chair, the phone clutched in a white-knuckled grip. An hour passed. Then another. The other families received periodic updates from doctors. There were tears of relief, tight hugs, quiet celebrations. I just sat there, staring at my silent phone, feeling the pitying glances of strangers. The silence from my family was no longer a mystery. It was a message. It was a deliberate, calculated act of abandonment. And it was happening while my son's heart was literally in a surgeon's hands. Just after 8 a.m., after 2 agonizing hours of silence, my phone finally buzzed. The caller ID read, "Dad." A tidal wave of relief, so powerful it almost buckled my knees, surged through me. I jumped up, already walking towards the elevators. They're here. They're lost in the parking garage. They got a flat tire. My mind raced, desperately manufacturing excuses for them. "Dad? Where are you? Are you guys downstairs?" I asked, the words tumbling out. "Michael." His voice was thin, strained, and I could hear the artificial bustle of a public place in the background. Not a hospital. "Listen, son. There's been a change of plans. We're not going to be able to make it." The world tilted on its axis. The background noise of the waiting room faded to a dull, rushing sound in my ears. What do you mean you can't make it?" My voice was a strangled whisper. "Dad, Leo is on the operating table right now." "I know that, Michael, I know," he said, his voice rushed and defensive. "It's just, something unavoidable came up. It's about the wedding." The wedding. The words landed like a physical punch to my gut. The wedding? The wedding isn't for 2 months. What in God's name could be more important than your grandson's life? "It's the venue," he stammered, and I could hear my mother's sharp, directing voice in the background, feeding him the lines. There was a booking issue. Conflict. They might have double-booked the main ballroom. We had to come down here immediately to sort it out. Your mother is beside herself. Chloe is just devastated. I leaned my forehead against the cold window, the glass doing nothing to cool the hot rage building inside me. They weren't saving a life. They weren't dealing with an emergency. They were arguing with a catering manager. They had weighed my son's open-heart surgery against a potential party inconvenience, and the party had won. It wasn't even a contest. "Are you serious right now?" I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You're telling me that protecting the deposit on a reception hall is your family's priority today?" I thought about my ex-wife, about how even after our bitter divorce, she would have moved heaven and earth to be here if she could. But she had passed away 2 years prior, leaving me to navigate this alone. "Now, don't use that tone with me, Michael," my father snapped, his guilt manifesting as anger. "A lot of money is at stake. This is a very important contract. This is Chloe's future we're talking about. Important." That single word severed the last, frayed thread of hope I had for them. "I understand," I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. He seized on it, relieved. "You do? Oh good. I knew you'd see reason." "No," I corrected him, my voice as cold and sterile as the surgical tools being used on my son. "I understand exactly what my son and I mean to you. I understand where we rank. Don't worry about calling me for updates. I'll handle it from here on out." I ended the call. I didn't shout. I didn't break down. I just stood there, staring blankly out the window, as a terrible, clarifying certainty settled into my bones. The family I thought I had, the family I had been desperately clinging to my whole life, didn't actually exist. It was an illusion, and it had just vanished in a puff of smoke. 4.5 hours after he was taken from me, the surgeon, Dr. Anderson, appeared through the double doors. Her face was tired but calm. "Michael?" she said, and my heart stopped. "The surgery went very well. The repair is secure. He's a tough little guy. He's in recovery now." The air I didn't know I was holding rushed out of my lungs in a ragged sob. I covered my face with my hands and cried, not with sadness, but with a release of tension so profound it felt like every muscle in my body was uncoiling at once. When I was finally allowed into the PACU, the sight of him stole my breath. He looked so small, so pale, adrift in a sea of white blankets and tethered to a web of beeping machines. His eyes fluttered open, glassy from the anesthesia. His first slurred words were a dagger to my heart. Did they come, Daddy?" Looking into his trusting, pain-filled eyes and telling him the truth was an act of cruelty I wasn't capable of. So I lied. "They got held up in a crazy situation, buddy. I whispered, stroking his hair. They sent all their love. They can't wait to see you when you're feeling a little better. He tried to nod, a flicker of disappointment crossing his face before the drugs pulled him back under. That lie felt like poison on my tongue. The next day he was more alert and he asked again. He didn't cry when I gave him another vague excuse. He just turned his face towards the window and became very quiet. It was a heavy, heartbreaking quiet, the sound of a child's faith cracking. That evening my mother called. Her voice was breezy, completely devoid of guilt. I hear the little soldier is doing wonderfully, she chirped. Honestly, Michael, you were being so terribly dramatic yesterday. We knew he would be fine. She then launched into a blow-by-blow account of her epic battle with the venue manager, portraying herself as the hero who had saved Chloe's wedding. I sat there, listening to her self-congratulatory monologue, a numb, buzzing static in my ears. I don't remember what I said. I think I just hung up. We spent 3 more days in the hospital. I focused every ounce of my being on Leo. We watched movies, I read him stories, and slowly, I saw my boy start to come back to me. We finally got to go home. I had just gotten him settled on the sofa, cocooned in his favorite blanket with a pile of comic books, when my phone buzzed. A text message. From Mom. My hands were shaking as I opened it. It read, "So glad Leo is home and recovering. Fantastic news. Chloe found the dress. It's a designer original, an absolute dream. It's $5,000. Your father and I are covering our share. We need you to contribute your part. Please transfer the money by Friday." I read it once, then twice. My gaze shifted from the glowing screen in my hand to my son sleeping on the couch. His breathing was shallow, and I could see the edge of the thick bandage peeking out from the collar of his pajamas. A scar over his heart, a permanent reminder of the battle he had just fought alone. And then I looked back at the text. A demand for money, for a piece of fabric. From the people who decided a conversation with a caterer was more important than his life. Something inside me didn't just break. It detonated. All the grief, all the rage, all the cumulative pain of a lifetime of being second best. It all combusted, and I started to laugh. It was a wild, raw, unhinged sound that was closer to a sob. My fingers moved with a life of their own. I opened my banking app. I navigated to the Zelle transfer page. I entered my mother's phone number. Amount, 50 cents. In the memo line, I typed, "For the veil. Best wishes." I hit send. Then, with cold, deliberate precision, I went to the account management page for Leo's fund. I found the section for authorized users. I saw her name, Eleanor, and with a single, decisive tap, I hit remove. A pop-up appeared. "Are you sure you want to permanently revoke Eleanor's access to this account?" My finger slammed down on confirm. Then I opened my contacts list and, one by one, I blocked all of them. Mom, Dad, Chloe, Daniel. The storm had passed. The war had just begun. The adrenaline from severing the ties carried me through the rest of the day. But after the call with Derek Morrison, I knew I couldn't just run on righteous anger. They had escalated things to a legal level, and I needed to be prepared. My first call was to Henry, my closest friend and a senior analyst at my firm. He'd been my best man at my wedding and the first person I called when it ended in divorce. He was my rock. I paced the confines of my office, the phone pressed hard against my ear, as I recounted every last, infuriating detail. The empty waiting room, the phone call from my father, the callous text, my 50-cent revenge, and finally, the call from their man at the bank. Henry listened, his silence a testament to his rising fury on my behalf. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "Okay," he said, his voice a low growl. "First off, I'm sorry, Michael. That is a level of monstrous selfishness I can't even comprehend. Second, good for you. It's about damn time you dropped the hammer. She's threatening lawsuits, Henry. Talking about financial abuse. Let her," he scoffed. "It's a scare tactic. Michael, you're a finance guy. You know the drill. What's the legal structure of that account? Is she a co-owner with equal rights? Or just an authorized signatory you added for convenience?" "Just a signatory," I confirmed. I set it up that way years ago as a failsafe when Leo was a baby. In case something happened to me, I'm the sole owner. All the tax forms for the interest income come to me in my name with my social security number. Then she can cry to the moon, but she doesn't have a legal leg to stand on, Henry said with conviction. But don't rely on me. You know the corporate counsel we have on retainer? Call them. Use the firm's account. This is a personal asset protection issue. Get a 15-minute consultation. Get a professional legal opinion in writing. And start your paper trail. Screenshot the text. Write down a timeline of every conversation, every broken promise. Treat this like you're building a case for a hostile takeover, because that's what this is. His words were a splash of icy water, washing away the last of my emotional panic and replacing it with cold, hard strategy. He was right. This was my turf. Finance, documentation, evidence, this was what I did for a living. I spent the next hour transforming from a wounded son into a methodical analyst. I made the call to the law firm. A brisk, efficient lawyer confirmed everything Henry had said. Unless your mother can produce a record of substantial, regular contributions, her claim is frivolous, she'd said. A judge would laugh it out of court. Next, I created a new, encrypted folder on my hard drive. I saved the screenshot of my mother's text. I downloaded the last 10 years of bank statements for the savings account, a pristine, undeniable record of monthly deposits from my salary. I found the original account holder agreement in my digital archives. I compiled it all. Then I opened a blank document and began to write, creating a detailed, dispassionate timeline of events, complete with dates, times, and direct quotes. A strange calm settled over me. They thought they were coming after the old Michael, the quiet peacemaker who would do anything to avoid a confrontation. They were about to discover they were facing someone else entirely. Someone with a lawyer's opinion, a decade of financial statements, and a spine made of pure, unadulterated steel. The knock on my door that evening was soft, hesitant. Not the frantic summons of my mother, but the cautious approach of a diplomat. I knew it was Daniel before I even looked through the peephole. He was the family's designated cleanup crew, the one they sent in when my mother's scorched earth tactics backfired. He stood on my porch holding a six-pack of craft IPA, my favorite. His face was arranged in a mask of brotherly concern. "Hey man," he said as I opened the door. "Got a minute? I think we should talk." I wordlessly stepped aside. He walked into the kitchen and set the beer on the counter, a peace offering I had no intention of accepting. "So," he began, leaning against the counter and trying for a casual air. "Mom called me. She's, spinning out." "I'll bet," I said, my voice flat. I didn't offer him a seat. It must be terribly inconvenient when your ATM refuses to dispense your unearned entitlement. Daniel sighed, a theatrical display of exhaustion. "Come on, Michael. Don't be like that. You know how she gets. She's obsessed with this wedding for Chloe. It's all she can think about. And my son's heart surgery?" I shot back, my voice dangerously quiet. Did that manage to occupy any of her thoughts at all? "Look, we messed up," he said, finally making eye contact. He had the grace to look ashamed. "Okay? We screwed the pooch on that one. We should have been there. There's no good excuse." For a split second, a foolish part of me hoped he might actually understand. "But," he continued, and the hope died instantly, "this is not the way to handle it. You can't just go nuclear. This $5,000, Michael. Is it really worth torching the entire family over? Think about the future, about any potential inheritance, about the holidays. Just give her the money. Let Chloe get her stupid dress. We can all say we're sorry, we'll buy Leo a huge present, and we can put this behind us. Just keep the peace. Keep the peace." The family mantra. For my entire life, keep the peace had been code for, let us do whatever we want, and don't you dare complain about it. It was the phrase they used to silence me, to invalidate my feelings, to maintain their comfortable, dysfunctional status quo. "Peace," I repeated, a humorless smirk on my face. "There is no peace, Daniel. There is only a long history of you guys steamrolling me and me being too exhausted to put up a fight. And you're not here to broker peace. You're here because Mom sent you. You're here because you don't want to deal with her screaming at you for the next 6 months. You want me to capitulate so your life can be easy again. The concerned brother facade vanished. His jaw tightened. You know, for a smart guy, you're being incredibly stupid about this, he said, his voice turning nasty. You're punishing everyone over a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. I corrected him, my voice like ice. It was a choice, and you chose wrong. You all did. Now, you can take your beer and your transparent attempt at manipulation, and you can get the hell out of my house. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing silently. He had never seen this version of me before. He snatched the beer off the counter so aggressively that one of the bottles clinked against another. You're going to regret this, Michael, he spat. You're all alone in this. He slammed the door on his way out. No, I thought as the silence settled around me. I'm not alone. I have my son. And for the first time, that feels like enough. 2 days later, the main assault began. It was a Saturday afternoon. For the first time since the surgery, Leo had enough energy to sit on the living room floor, meticulously assembling a complex Lego spaceship. I was on the floor with him, handing him the pieces he asked for, soaking in the simple, peaceful joy of the moment. Then the doorbell rang. It wasn't a normal ring. It was a frantic, insistent mashing of the button, a sound of pure entitlement. I glanced through the peephole. My stomach dropped. The whole crew was there. My mother, Eleanor, her face a thundercloud of fury. My father, Richard, standing behind her like a grim-faced bodyguard. And beside them, her face puffy and tear-streaked, was the princess herself, Chloe. My first instinct was to protect Leo. Hey, buddy, I said, keeping my voice light and steady. I need you to take your spaceship and finish it in your room. Okay? Grandma and Grandpa are here, and the grown-ups need to have a very boring talk. He saw the look on my face and knew instantly. He was a child who had become an expert at reading tense atmospheres. Without a word, he gathered his Lego pieces and scurried down the hallway, closing his bedroom door softly behind him. I took a deep, fortifying breath, turned the deadbolt, and opened the door. My mother stormed past me, not waiting for an invitation. Michael, what on earth do you think you're doing? You block our phone numbers? You steal our money? Have you completely lost your mind? Chloe swept in after her, already in mid-wail. You're ruining my wedding. My one perfect day. Grayson's mother keeps asking about the dress, and I have to tell her my own brother is holding it hostage. My father was the last to enter, a hulking, silent presence of disapproval. He shut the door behind him with a heavy thud. Okay, let's get a few things straight, I said, turning to face them. My voice was calm, but it had a hard edge they had never heard before. 1. Get out of my house. 2. I didn't steal anything. I secured my son's assets from a group of people who suddenly decided his college fund was their personal slush fund. That money is his, not yours. Not family money. It is family money. Eleanor shrieked, her voice climbing. A family is supposed to help each other. Your sister is in crisis. She needs this dress. The deposit is non-refundable. This is what a good brother, a good son is supposed to do. Help. I let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. Let me tell you what help looks like. Help is sitting in a cold, sterile waiting room for 4.5 hours, praying that your 7-year-old son or grandson doesn't die on an operating table. Help is showing up. Help is answering the damn phone. You don't know the first thing about help. You only know how to demand and how to take. That is a vicious, hateful thing to say. My mother spat. Is it the truth, though? I countered, taking a step forward. I looked directly at Chloe, whose performative tears suddenly seemed to dry up under my direct gaze. You're not devastated about your wedding. You're inconvenienced. Your nephew, the little boy who used to make you macaroni necklaces, was having his chest cracked open, and you were worried about a booking conflict. You declined my call from the hospital. Did you think I wouldn't notice? She flushed, stammering. It was a bad time. We were in a meeting. And you? I said, turning to my father, who was still avoiding my eyes. You couldn't even come up with your own lie. I could hear her in the background, feeding you the lines. Have you ever had a single thought she didn't approve of first? He flinched as if I'd struck him. You have no idea what we've been going through, Chloe finally managed to say, her voice trembling with self-pity. Then, for God's sake, enlighten me. I boomed, my control finally snapping. What crisis? What earth-shattering catastrophe could possibly justify abandoning a child in his moment of terror? My father looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. But it was my mother, pushed into a corner and furious at losing control of the narrative, who finally gave me the answer. And in doing so, she detonated a bomb in the center of the room. You think this is about a dress? My mother screamed, her voice raw with a desperation that was terrifying in its intensity. You think we are this upset over a piece of fabric? You selfish, ignorant, little boy. You have no idea what is actually at stake here. I stood my ground, my arms crossed, a cold calm descending over my rage. Then tell me, Mom. I'm listening. What's at stake? Everything, she shrieked, her hands waving frantically in the air as if to ward off some invisible demon. Everything is at stake. We need that money. We need it now. You don't need a $5,000 dress, I said, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous level. You want it. And that was the pin that pulled the grenade. Her carefully constructed facade of maternal concern and righteous indignation shattered, and the raw, ugly, terrified truth came pouring out. It's not for the dress, you idiot, she screamed, the words so loud they seemed to shake the very walls of my house. The silence that followed was absolute, deafening. The dress is just an excuse. Your father's business is going under. It has been failing for a year. We're months behind on the mortgage. We are going to lose the house, the cars, everything. This wedding, Grayson's family, they have money, real money. It's our only way out. We need to look successful. We need this wedding to be perfect. We need his family to think we're their equals, so they'll bail out your father's company. So yes, we need that money. The confession hung in the air between us, ugly and pulsing. The blood drained from my father's face. He looked at my mother with an expression of pure horror, as if he couldn't believe she had just said it all out loud. Chloe stood frozen, her mouth agape, her eyes wide with a genuine shock that had nothing to do with her wedding dress. This was clearly news to her. The pampered princess had been a pawn in her own parents' desperate financial endgame. And in that moment I understood everything. It wasn't just narcissism. It wasn't just casual cruelty. It was a calculated, cold-blooded business decision. They had looked at two events on a calendar, Leo's heart surgery and save ourselves from financial ruin, and they had made their choice. My son's pain had been weighed against their financial desperation, and it hadn't stood a chance. They were willing to sacrifice his emotional well-being, his trust, his sense of safety, all for a chance to secure a business deal. The anger inside me didn't burn out. It turned to ice. I looked at the three of them. My hysterical mother, my broken father, my stunned sister, and I felt nothing but a vast, empty pity. I walked to my front door and pulled it open. Get out, I said. My voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but it carried the finality of a judge's gavel. My mother stared at me, her chest heaving. Michael, you don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, I said, my voice hardening. I understand that you were going to use my son's college fund to finance a lie. Get out of my house. Your financial failures are not my son's responsibility. Chloe, finally finding her voice, started to stammer an apology, but I cut her off. I looked straight at my father. Was my son's heart surgery an acceptable loss in your business plan? He flinched, unable to meet my gaze, and shuffled past me out the door like a condemned man. Chloe followed, a lost look on her face. My mother was the last one left. She stood in the doorway, the fight gone out of her, her face a mask of bitter defeat. "You've destroyed this family," she whispered. "No," I said, looking her directly in the eye, no longer the boy she could intimidate. "You and Dad destroyed it with your lies and your pride. I'm just the one who finally turned on the lights." I closed the door in her face, shot the deadbolt home, and leaned against the solid wood, the blessed, profound silence of my own home washing over me like a baptism. This was the moment that changed everything, the moment I finally took back control of my life. Thank you for sticking with me to this point. You guys are amazing. If you could do me a huge favor and like this video and drop a 1 in the comments below, it lets me know you're here with me on this journey. It doesn't just help more people find this story. It tells me that my experiences mean something to someone out there. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to continue sharing the rest of this story. The days after the explosion were defined by a series of aftershocks. The first wave came from the outer rings of the family, the flying monkeys, as my therapist would later call them, relatives dispatched by my mother to guilt-trip me back into line. My Aunt Carol was the first. "Michael, dear," she began, her voice dripping with syrupy condescension. "I spoke with your mother. She is simply devastated. I think you're being very cruel. You know, family is the most important thing. Sometimes we have to rise above our petty grievances for the sake of our elders." "Aunt Carol," I said, my voice polite but firm, "let me ask you something. Did my mother happen to mention that she, my father, my brother, and my sister all skipped my 7-year-old's open-heart surgery to go argue with a wedding planner?" A brief, sputtering silence on the other end. "Well, she mentioned there were some unavoidable complications. And did she also mention that her husband's business is bankrupt, and they were trying to extract $5,000 from my son's medical fund to keep up appearances for my sister's rich fiancé?" I continued calmly, "Because those are the complications. If you feel they're deserving of your support, you should write them a check. But my son's future is not for sale. Please don't call me about this again." I hung up. The calls from relatives stopped. The second wave was a direct assault. My mother, realizing she was blocked on every other front, decided to bring the battle to my turf, my office. I worked for a mid-sized financial firm, and our office had an open floor plan. I was on a conference call, discussing quarterly earnings, when I saw her through the glass wall of the conference room. She strode in like she owned the place, her face a mask of grim determination, heading directly for my desk. My blood ran cold. This was a sacred boundary she was crossing. Before she could reach my desk and start a scene, my boss, Mr. Davison, the firm's CEO, emerged from his corner office. He was a distinguished man in his late 60s, sharp, perceptive, and not someone you messed with. He physically intercepted her. "May I help you?" he asked, his voice calm but radiating authority. "I am here to see my son, Michael," she announced, as if that gave her diplomatic immunity. "It is a private family matter." "This is a private place of business," Mr. Davison countered smoothly, not moving an inch. "Any family matters can be addressed outside of office hours. I'm going to have to ask you to leave, or I'll have security escort you out." My mother was stunned into silence. She was so used to being the one in charge that being calmly and firmly shut down by a stranger left her momentarily paralyzed. She shot me a look of pure venom, then turned on her heel and stormed out. The entire office was still, a collective intake of breath. 10 minutes later, I got the email I was dreading from Mr. Davison's assistant. "Mr. Davison would like to see you in his office at your earliest convenience." I walked in, bracing for a lecture. He motioned for me to close the door and sit. He didn't mention my mother. Instead, he leaned forward. "Your son, Michael. How is his recovery coming along?" The question was so unexpected it threw me off balance. He's doing very well, sir. Thank you." He nodded, a small smile touching his lips. "Good. I don't know the details of what's happening in your personal life, and I don't need to. But I know what I've seen in this office. For the past 2 months, you have been dealing with an unimaginable level of personal stress, and you have not missed a single deadline or dropped a single ball. You've shown more grace under pressure than men twice your age. That's character." He slid a folder across the polished desk towards me. We're restructuring the wealth management division. The board has approved my recommendation for you to head it. It's a significant promotion with a salary to match. You've earned it. I stared at the folder, then at him, speechless. In the wreckage of my family, a stranger was showing me the respect and validation I had spent my entire life craving from them. It felt like coming up for air after being held underwater for a very, very long time. A few weeks later, my father came to my house. He came alone. I saw him from the kitchen window, just standing on the sidewalk for a good 5 minutes, looking at the house as if it were a fortress he didn't have the courage to approach. When he finally rang the bell, he looked like a man who had aged 10 years in a month. His shoulders were slumped, and his eyes were hollow. I let him in, but I didn't invite him to sit. We stood in the awkward silence of the entryway. "I'm sorry," he finally said, his voice a hoarse whisper. The words sounded painful, as if they were being torn from his throat. "For everything, Michael. There's no excuse. Not a single one." I didn't offer him easy absolution. I just looked at him. "Why, Dad?" I asked. "That's all I want to know. Why would you do that to him? To Leo?" He shook his head, his eyes welling with tears. "Cowardice," he said, his voice cracking. "That's the only answer. I was a coward. The business was failing, I was drowning in debt, and I was too proud and too scared to admit it to anyone. I let your mother's insane, desperate plan become my plan because it was easier than facing the truth that I had failed." He finally looked up and met my gaze, his eyes filled with a bottomless shame. "When you're that terrified, you make monstrous choices." We looked at our grandson, our beautiful, brave grandson, and we saw him as an obstacle. My God, what kind of men have we become? I listened to his confession. The rage I had felt for him was gone, replaced by a deep, weary sadness. He wasn't a monster. He was just a weak man who had made monstrous choices. "I can't forgive you right now," I said, my voice steady. "I don't know if I ever will. But this isn't about me. You broke a little boy's heart. He's the one you should be thinking about." I took a half step back, a clear signal that the conversation was over. "I think you need to go. Leo and I need peace. We need to heal. We can't do that while we're still cleaning up the wreckage from your explosion." He nodded slowly, a single tear tracing a path down his weathered cheek. "I understand," he whispered. He turned and walked away, not looking back. As I closed the door, I felt a sense of finality. It wasn't about revenge. It was about boundaries. It was about choosing the quiet peace of my new life over the familiar chaos of my old one. It was the emotional funeral for the family I once thought I had. The 3 months that followed were the most peaceful of my adult life. It was as if a loud, jarring, discordant noise that had been playing in the background of my existence for 40 years had finally been turned off. The resulting silence was sublime. My life simplified into a rhythm of purpose and love. Everything revolved around Leo's recovery and my new role at work. We had our weekly check-ins with Dr. Anderson, who used words like remarkable and textbook recovery. We did our physical therapy exercises, which slowly transformed from a chore into a source of laughter as Leo got stronger and more confident. I watched with a heart full of gratitude as the color returned to his cheeks and the boundless energy of a 7-year-old returned to his limbs. Freed from the constant drain of my family's drama, I had a reservoir of energy I never knew existed. I poured it into my new position at work. I redesigned workflows, mentored junior analysts, and landed 2 major new clients for the firm. Mr. Davison would often stop by my new corner office, not just to talk business, but to ask how Leo was doing. I was building a new kind of family, a professional one built on mutual respect and genuine support. Leo and I built our own small, perfect world. We established new traditions. Fortress Fridays involved turning the living room into a labyrinth of blankets and cushions for movie nights. Pancake Saturdays were a sacred ritual. We took a weekend trip to a cabin in the mountains. I watched him run through a field of wildflowers, chasing butterflies, his chest bare in the sun. The scar over his heart was a thin, silvery line now, no longer a symbol of his wound, but a testament to his strength. It was a warrior's mark. I heard whispers about my family through a cousin who hadn't taken sides. Chloe's wedding of the century had been dramatically downscaled. Grayson's family, the wealthy saviors my parents were counting on, had apparently done their due diligence and discovered the truth about my father's failing business. The life-saving investment never came. The wedding happened, but it was a quiet, subdued affair at the local country club, not the lavish event my mother had envisioned. I felt a detached sense of justice, but I was too immersed in my own happiness to spare it much thought. Their world, built on a foundation of lies and appearances, was crumbling. My world, rebuilt from the ashes and centered on love and honesty, was thriving. For my entire life, I had believed I needed their approval to feel whole. The profound irony was that it was only in their absence that I finally found myself. One afternoon, a small, padded envelope with no return address appeared in my mailbox. I recognized my father's shaky, spidery handwriting instantly. My first impulse was to throw it in the trash, unopened. I didn't want any Trojan horses breaching the walls of the peaceful kingdom Leo and I had built. But a deeper, more complex curiosity stayed my hand. I waited until Leo was sound asleep, then sat at the kitchen table under the single dim light, a glass of water in my hand, and slit the envelope open. Inside were two items: a cashier's check for exactly $5,000, and a single sheet of lined paper, folded 3 times. My hands felt unsteady as I unfolded the letter. The same shaky handwriting filled the page. Michael, I am writing this letter knowing that no words can fix what I have broken. The word sorry is an insult to the pain I caused you and, most unforgivably, Leo. I know this, but it is the only word I have, so I will say it. I am sorry. I told you I was a coward, but I wasn't completely honest about the depth of it. This wasn't a recent failure. The truth is, I've been a coward for years. The business started to fail a long time ago. I made a series of bad, proud decisions. I was too arrogant to adapt, too proud to admit I was in over my head. And I hid it. I hid it from your mother, from you, from everyone. I took out secret loans. I moved money around. I constructed an elaborate lie, telling myself every day that I could fix it before the whole thing came crashing down. When Eleanor found out how bad it was, she panicked. She is a master at rewriting reality, and she created a new one. Chloe's wedding would be our salvation. It wasn't a family celebration. It was a financial transaction, a desperate last-chance gamble to impress Grayson's family and secure a bailout. And I, in my weakness and terror, went along with it. I let myself believe the lie because it was less painful than admitting the truth of my own failure. We looked at our grandson's surgery, an event that should have brought our family together in love and fear, and we saw it as a threat to our scheme. We weighed your agony against our financial desperation. We made the worst, most shameful choice a parent and grandparent can make. It was a moral bankruptcy that was far worse than the financial one. This check is not a bribe for forgiveness. I know that's not for sale. I sold my old woodworking tools, the last things of value I truly owned, to get this money. It is a repayment. A small, inadequate gesture of accountability. It's the first honest financial transaction I've made in years. I betrayed you and I betrayed your son. I don't know if I can ever fix that. I will live with that failure for the rest of my life. Dad, I read the letter once, then again. It didn't excuse his actions. It didn't erase the memory of the silent phone in the waiting room, but it reframed the story. It was not a tale of simple villains, but a tragic account of a man's pride leading him down a path of lies and moral decay. It was the confession of a man who had lost everything, most importantly his own honor, long before he lost his business. I folded the letter and put it and the check in a drawer. I knew I would never cash it, but it was no longer a symbol of their demand. It was a symbol of his regret, a small, lonely flickering candle in a vast darkness. On a bright, lazy Sunday morning a few days later, I knew it was time. Leo was at the coffee table, deeply focused on a drawing of a T-Rex wearing a cape and flying over a city. The sunlight streamed into our peaceful living room. I sat on the floor beside him and placed the folded letter and the check on the table. He deserved to be the one to close this chapter. "Hey, buddy," I said softly, not wanting to startle him. "Can we talk for a minute about something important?" He looked up, his brown eyes curious. "Okay. I got a letter from Grandpa," I began, choosing my words carefully. "He wanted me to tell you that he is very, very sorry. He said that he and Grandma and Aunt Chloe and Uncle Daniel all feel terrible that they weren't at the hospital. He said they were dealing with some big, scary, grown-up problems, and because they were scared, they made a very bad, very selfish choice. He knows they hurt your feelings, and he is very ashamed." Leo looked at the letter, his little face serious. He didn't speak. He just listened, absorbing the information with a child's simple gravity. "He also sent this," I said, lightly tapping the check. "It's money. It's his way of trying to say sorry. We're not going to use it, it's going straight into your college fund. But I wanted you to see it. I wanted you to know that he knows they were wrong." I took a breath. This was the crucial part. I was determined to give my son the one thing I was never given. A choice. "Here's the thing, Leo," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "It is completely up to you what happens next. Forgiveness is not something you ever have to give away. And if you do, it has to be your decision when you feel ready. If you ever want to see them again, we can talk about it. If you never want to see them again, that is perfectly okay too. There is no wrong answer. Whatever you feel in your heart is the right answer." I had laid all the cards on the table. I had given him all the power. He looked at the letter, then at the check. His gaze drifted around our living room, at his Lego creations, at our little herb garden on the balcony, at his drawing of the flying dinosaur. He was quiet for a long time, and I gave him the gift of that silence, letting him process everything without any pressure. Finally, he looked back at me, and a small, sweet, certain smile spread across his face. "I like it when it's just us, Daddy," he said. The last knot of tension I didn't even know I was still carrying in my soul finally dissolved. I pulled him into my arms, hugging him so tightly he giggled. I buried my face in his soft hair, breathing in the simple, clean scent of my son, my family, my whole world. "Me too, buddy," I whispered into his hair. "Me too." I knew then that the door to the past wasn't bolted and barred. Maybe one day, far in the future, it might be opened a crack. But I also knew, with a certainty that settled deep into my very bones, that my primary job was no longer to try and fix what was broken. It was to protect what was whole. And in that moment, holding my son, I felt more whole than I ever had in my life. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with you in some way. It's been a long and difficult journey, but one that has taught me so much about strength, boundaries, and what family truly means. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between your peace and your family? I'd be incredibly grateful to hear about your own experiences in the comments below. Please share your story, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Your support means the world.